few days past Met Gala Monday, and the general consensus is everyone did a really good job this year. Almost too good of a job. Hi friends, if you're new here, my name is Kennedy and I'm a bridal stylist in LA. And today we are talking about the 2023 Met Gala looks. If you aren't familiar, the exhibit at the Costume Institute at the Met this year was entitled Karl Lagerfeld, A Line of Beauty. And it was all about celebrating Karl Lagerfeld's long history in fashion. This was a very controversial theme, not because it was really difficult or because it was hard to understand, but just because Karl Lagerfeld himself was a very controversial individual. There is a ton of information out now about him. I did a full breakdown on his controversies, his history on my Instagram. Those will all be saved in a highlight. And there are multiple other creators who have done full videos on Karl Lagerfeld, why he is sort of like a nefarious individual, and why this particular Met Gala was very difficult to participate in fully and just have fun with, because it was celebrating a kind of horrible person. All that to say that I definitely myself felt really conflicted about this theme. I do agree that Karl Lagerfeld said some more vile than okay things throughout his lifetime. That being said, I do view the Met Museum and the Met Gala as more of an educational exhibit that happens to also have a really big event tied to that exhibit. And I'm just of the belief that when it comes to educating people on the history of a person and a place and a thing, that we should be as honest as possible about the history of that piece. And Karl Lagerfeld, you genuinely cannot talk about fashion and a lot of modern day fashion trends, motifs without talking about Karl Lagerfeld. So if you can't separate Karl Lagerfeld from the history of fashion, then you have to be really honest about the history of him as a person as well. But like I said, there are already a ton of creators who have talked about him, his history. You can read about it on my Instagram. I will also include some links below of a few other creators who have talked about both sides, good and bad, of his history. And today we are just going to talk about the looks that came down the carpet. So the exhibit for the Met Gala was Karl Lagerfeld, A Line of Beauty, and the dress code this year for the Met Gala participants was in honor of Karl. Karl Lagerfeld is best known for his work reviving the House of Chanel back in the 80s, but he also worked with many other brands throughout his lifetime, including but not limited to Balmain, Valentino, Chloe, Fendi. So there was a lot for people to choose from for this event. And the theme itself was it was so easy. I think the most common thing I'm hearing after the Met Gala is wow, everybody was so on theme. This was such a good year for the Met Gala. And it's yeah, everyone was really on theme, but kind of because it would have been embarrassing to not hit the theme, it was that easy. It's sort of like when you were in high school and you had teachers who once a year would give you all the answers to a test, and if you failed that test, it was embarrassing because you had already been given the answers ahead of time, which made it so that this Met Gala overall kind of felt a little bit more lackluster and honestly a little bit underwhelming. It was really just a parade of Lagerfeld's best known works, although there were a few designers who really did add some twists into the theme. So that isn't to say nobody surprised and shocked us, but it definitely wasn't as interesting in my opinion as watching people trying to figure out the In America themes. But enough talking, let's get into the look. I'm gonna start off with my favorite looks and then we'll save my least favorite looks for the end, mostly because I didn't have that many least favorite looks. Like I said, it was a really easy theme. It was really easy to hit. So first and foremost, one of my favorite looks of the night was, that was my attempt at a drum roll without having to actually hit anything. One of my favorite looks of the night was Cardi B. Cardi B, I mean, she just kills it every single year. And I think I've talked about this multiple times where I just would love for the fashion world to wake up and take her a little bit more seriously. She just consistently serves such amazing looks on the carpet, both Met Gala and other carpets. And this year was no different. So if you know anything about the Met Gala, you know that the stars actually, they get photographed pretty much 2 times during the Met Gala. once when they are leaving the hotel and there's like paparazzi lined up to watch them actually go to the Met Gala, and a second time walking down the Met Gala carpet. They get photographed a third time if you include like the Met Gala after party looks, but so many people change for the after party that I don't count that. So Cardi B actually originally walked out of the Clark Hotel wearing a full Miss Sohee look. I was actually watching both the Clark Hotel live stream and the Vogue Met Gala live stream, and when I saw Cardi B walk out in the Miss Sohee, I was like, that is beautiful, amazing. I don't really understand like how it fits with the theme, but it's beautiful. And I was actually really disappointed because I was like, that doesn't seem like Cardi B. She usually thinks really in depth about the theme and how like her outfits fit the theme. I was really surprised. And I was even more surprised when literally 5 minutes later, she shows up on the Met Gala carpet in a completely different look. Like I'm talking different wig, different dress, different shoes. I was shocked. This woman tricked us all. Cardi B worked with stylist Colin Carter. I think it's either Colin or Colin Carter. And Colin actually in a backstage interview talked about what it was like to change in the Sprinter van. They pretty much said that they were just having fun with the photographers, that they came out in that Miss Sohee look to really trick everyone into thinking like that's what she was gonna wear, and then showed up in the Met Gala carpet in a completely different look. Most people cannot find one really well-styled look to wear down the carpet. Cardi throughout the night had 4. I don't even know. I don't know what more she has to do to be like solidified in the Fashion Hall of Fame, because that's wild. So first she steps out in the Miss Sohee, beautiful look. I loved the hair. I loved the makeup. I loved everything about it. And then she steps down the carpet in this amazing Chen Pang ball gown. Chen Pang did a really interesting twist on the camellia flower, which is a motif that's like very closely associated with Chanel. And Karl Lagerfeld actually helped with the redesign of the camellia flower, so that's also very in tune with him. I loved how they did like a very preppy look. I think this is styled so Chanel, but just like a little bit edgier. She even said on Instagram that like she was a little bit scared to do the gray wig, but she's so glad she stuck with it. And I actually really love that. I think she's like one of the only celebrities I saw who actually posted about what it was like to put the look together, and even some of like her thoughts behind her outfit. She's also so good about shouting out her designers, like every single designer she works with down to like the jewelry. I just don't understand why some people make it so freaking difficult for you to find what designer that they're wearing down the carpet. And if you're working that closely with a designer, shout them out. We all want to know who created these beautiful looks. Cardi B was just like outstanding, no notes, so beautiful. And then she changes into a Richard Quinn tweed mermaid gown. I am so deliriously obsessed with this look. I'm actually really glad she didn't wear it down the carpet because the Chen Pang was so perfect for the carpet. But for the actual Met Gala party, the fact that she changed into this and kind of went from really preppy OG Chanel to more like tacky, slutty Chanel, I love. The tweed and the pattern is obviously very true to the Chanel style, but you can definitely see a lot of Richard Quinn's own inspirations coming into it. My favorite part of like a lot of the designers doing this theme was we could kind of see what it would be like if any of these designers took over the House of Chanel. It's almost like when you see like artists who do, oh, I'm gonna do this picture but in my art style. And I loved this whole look. I loved that it was pink and that she really did change colors throughout the night. I thought that was really fun. Pink is obviously a color that Karl Lagerfeld has said that he doesn't really love that much. He doesn't love to wear, but it's a really integral color in the House of Chanel. And she also did the black and white, which is Karl Lagerfeld's personal color scheme. And then she attended the after party in a Sergio Castagna Pena gown. This gown was much simpler in style and I think was much better for like an after party look. But what's really cool about it is the designer actually printed some of Karl Lagerfeld's first WWD articles onto the gown itself. So it was a very subtle, simple, but beautifully thoughtful homage. She's always one of my favorites to watch at the Met Gala, and like she is just really up there with Rihanna, with Zendaya as like one of the queens of the Met Gala. Another one of my favorites is like a common favorite. It's Anne Hathaway in Versace. Monday. This look was so stunning. I said on Instagram, it kind of looked like she had like cut up and redesigned a Chanel look. It was very edgy. It was a little bit punk. It was so Donatella. I absolutely adored this. And this is something that was said in the pre-interviews that I think a lot of people didn't focus on once she was on the carpet, but she actually had a vintage hairpiece from Chanel, which was a camellia that kind of looked like hair that she used in her hairstyle. I personally love when stars and their stylists think about every little detail. I think that just adds to the overall look. And it honestly was just such a cool touch. And I love that they had like a signature Chanel jacket, but she wasn't actually wearing it. She was just like holding it sort of so it looked like a train. I saw a lot of people who actually were tricked by this and thought that it was a full train, but it wasn't. She was wearing a jacket. And I think the color was such a good choice for her. I feel like when I think of Versace, I think of like hot pink and black. So the fact that they did a white cream like tweed design with gold hardware was just so beautiful. I love this whole look. It definitely felt very like pushing the boundaries of what we think of when we think of like Chanel preppy. And again, it very much looked like, okay, what would Chanel look like if Donatella Versace became the creative director? Another one of my favorite looks of the night was Harvey Guillen. I apologize on TikTok. I accidentally read it as Julian. I was already like 6 hours into my Met Gala coverage and I made a couple videos and I just like read his name really fast. That's my bad. I'm so sorry and I'm ashamed. Harvey Guillen wore Christian Siriano, and Christian Siriano is known for doing a really great job with larger bodies. I think he consistently puts out not only really flattering but interesting looks on plus size persons, and this is no exception. Harvey Guillen looked amazing and he looked like he was having so much fun like moving in the gown. I love that it was pink. I love the like huge homage to the camellia flowers on his shoulders. I love the giant train, which just adds a little bit of like that Christian Siriano flair. I don't know how I feel about the huge like solid panel on the front of the suit, but besides that, everything else was 10 out of 10 perfection. I really just think Harvey Guillen is like one to watch when it comes to Met Gala. Janelle Monáe in Tom Brown was outstanding. After Lady Gaga co-chaired the Met Gala and did her stripped down look, I think a lot of stars have been trying to like re-emulate this. We saw Lil Nas try to emulate it. We saw even Jared Leto trying to do a double reveal this year, but I don't think anyone's really done it as well as Janelle Monáe, specifically because I think when you're going to do a reveal or a strip down, there has to be like a larger reason to it besides just like necessarily showing the body. And I think specifically with this Tom Brown look, what was really interesting to see was how little was needed to make the shape of that coat. So when Janelle Monáe first walks the carpet, she's in this huge... Okay, I had to check because I was 99% sure that Janelle Monáe did come out as non-binary, but she does go by she, her pronouns. She says, my pronouns are free and they, them, her, she. So I just needed to check, make sure I was using the right pronouns. So when Janelle Monáe first walks the carpet, she's wearing this giant Tom Brown look. It's super structured. And to a lot of people who maybe can't see underneath, they might think, oh my gosh, there must be so much going on underneath. That must be so uncomfortable to wear. There must be a lot keeping that shape. And then when she takes the jacket off, she reveals that she's only really wearing a huge horsehair piece underneath. And besides that, she's not really wearing anything else, which I think is just really exciting because it shows that Tom Brown is more concerned with like the structure and the actual architecture of the piece rather than just trying to use a bunch of literal fluff to try and keep that shape. I think that speaks to Tom Brown's skill, how solid his construction work is, and just in general, I thought it was really fun. It was unexpected. We weren't expecting what was underneath. I really liked it. She was one of my favorite looks of the night, and Tom Brown was definitely one of my favorite designers. And you're gonna be able to tell that he was one of my favorite designers because my next two favorites were also in Tom Brown. The first person is Olivia Rodrigo. I've talked about Olivia Rodrigo a few times in relation to the Met Gala and honestly just red carpet looks in general. And I feel like her two past Met Gala looks have been kind of a miss. Her very first Met Gala look, I talked about how I felt like it was pushing her too hard to become like this mature woman. And then last year she looked stunning. One of my favorite Versace looks ever, but just like did not hit the theme for me. Whereas this year, I would have never ever put Olivia Rodrigo with Tom Brown. That is just not a partnership in my mind that I feel like aesthetically meshes. And I am so wrong I have never been so wrong in my entire life because this is a wonderful partnership. Olivia Rodrigo, in my opinion, has never looked better. I think that this was such an interesting look for her. I love, again, the construction of the dress and that you think it's like really soft and loose, but then there are a few pieces within the like, I don't even know what you would call those. Like within the little squiggle things where you can see Thom Browne actually constructed it so it would not move on the skirt, but there's other parts of the skirt that are very fluid. It kind of makes me think of that like spaghetti art installation that was at LACMA, if you remember that from like years and years ago. And the best part about it was it still looked very Olivia Rodrigo. This was such an interesting look. I love the homage to the camellia flowers. I loved the homage to the black and white, but it still felt very, very Olivia. Like this was a look that I was like, it's not wearing her. She looks really comfortable in it. It definitely flatters her. It's something that's within her wheelhouse, but still very exciting and fresh. I do really think that this dress showed that Thom Browne took the time to not only figure out what would look good on her, but what would make her feel good while still staying true to his own designer integrity. And then my next one, oh, this is my favorite of the entire night. Jenna Ortega in Thom Browne. I saw this get put on some of the worst dress lists, and I would just like to know how we can set up a bare knuckles cage fight for me to go in with any of those people who wrote those articles. Because she looks so good. This is such a cool look. I totally understand the camp of people who are like, she does her hair and makeup the same for every carpet. Normally, I would agree with you, but I just think the hair and makeup goes so well with this particular design that I'm not gonna fault her for it. The shape, the shoes, the colors, I loved every piece of this design. I loved the call to like 18th century designs, which was Karl Lagerfeld's like favorite century. That sounds really funny to say, but Karl Lagerfeld took a lot of inspiration from 17th and 18th century fashion. So to see sort of like that peplum and that really over-exaggerated hips being utilized in this very modern and fresh way was so exciting. I adored the little bow tie. I actually think it looks like what Chanel uses to like wrap up their pieces when someone buys something in store. I loved the fingerless gloves. That's such an homage to Karl Lagerfeld and what he always used to wear. The socks are so cute. I know a lot of people really didn't like them. I loved them. Chanel has actually come out with a really similar fishnet sock that looks a lot like that, and I thought that was really fun. I loved the shoes. I love the shoes. I think that they are so clowny and kind of weird, and I just loved them. And I thought that it was so fun that he went with something like that instead of just a plain black shoe. He really thought about like, okay, how can we style this so that it feels like a really complete look and everything down to the shoes still feels really unique. And I just adore the way that he broke up more of the skirt, like the blackness in the skirt with that gold hardware going through. Not to mention like the subtle pearl pieces, like he didn't use pearl all the way through the chain, just like a few really, really meticulously placed pearl pieces. Like the longer I look at this design, the more that comes to the forefront. Like I didn't notice even until just now looking at it that she had little cutouts going down the side. I love the cropped jacket, the really tight corset, the big skirt, the train, the asymmetrical train. This is probably one of my favorite looks that has ever walked down the Met Gala carpet. I think that there was so much attention to detail throughout the entire piece. Thom Browne genuinely like earned his spot at the Met Gala this year. Honestly, if you look at Thom Browne's, like he's posted so many videos that are just like every single person that he dressed to go to the Met Gala. I want that picture with all of them lined up framed in my studio because it's so good. Like he only used really black and white for all the designs and they look so good. I can't believe he did so much with just black and white. Sora Choi also looked amazing. I can't even get into all the details of her gown right now. I could do a whole video just on Sora Choi because this thing was so cool. And even the men, like he did some really, really cool things with suits this year. The next one I really loved was Conan Gray and Balmain. He came sort of dressed as like a very edgy modern day Karl Lagerfeld. And you can really see how Balmain's own design style really seeps into the Chanel inspiration. I also really like the heel shape of the boot, but I think a lot of times the heel can be a really difficult thing to pull off because if you do something that's like too chunky, you end up looking sort of like Suki Waterhouse, who just kind of looked like she picked up the most recent like Steve Madden design. But if you go too stiletto, sometimes it can look like you're trying a little bit too hard. I thought the shape of this heel was very interesting. It's very on trend right now. We're seeing a lot of heels coming out like this. We're seeing a lot of different people play with heel shapes like YSL, Gucci, and Dior. And I really like that the boot stays very masculine, but still remains a very interesting shape. This definitely isn't the most revolutionary outfit that came down the carpet, but I did think it was a very cool interpretation of Chanel. And again, I just really like that we got to see a taste of like what would it look like if Beaumont and Chanel had a baby. The next one that I really liked that I feel like got a lot of mixed reviews, surprisingly, and was one I was not expecting to like. I had the lowest expectations for her, was Kendall Jenner and Marc Jacobs. Kendall Jenner is usually one of my least favorite people on the red carpet, and this year I genuinely really liked her look. It wasn't like the most glamorous thing that walked down the carpet, but I loved the subtle homages to traditional Chanel. I was hoping and praying that someone was gonna walk down the carpet with no pants because it's such a Chanel vibe, like OG vintage Chanel runway. And I actually think Kendall Jenner was like the perfect person to do this. I love not only that it's black and white, but they did do the quilted underneath like her big sleeve trains, which for me made me think of like the Chanel quilt bag, of course. It stayed very preppy. It sort of looked like Chanel Magician, and I was like very pleasantly surprised with how well I thought she did the theme. And then of course, we have to talk about Rihanna and Valentino. I feel like this was a very polarizing look, especially because Rihanna was so late to the red carpet. Rihanna has been consistently like carrying the Met Gala on her back for like the past few years. And I cannot imagine how much pressure it must feel like to like consistently have to put out these really amazing looks. I half feel like that might be why Zendaya chooses not to go anymore, or even Ariana Grande, is that they just did so many amazing looks, like it would be really hard to top. People are sort of waiting for their downfall. All that to say, like, I still thought she looked amazing. I thought it was such a cool tribute to the camellia flower. I actually really, really loved her whole design, her whole outfit. I didn't think it was as incredible as some things that she's worn in the past. But again, I thought the theme left little for interpretation. I think Rihanna genuinely has more fun when the themes are a little bit more complex, especially when it's a theme that like not a lot of people do hit. It is nice to see that she like consistently is on theme. And I just love that she sort of like tried to skip all the cameras and skip all the interviews. I do think that she did it on purpose just because like she's tired. Like she just had a baby, she's on her second, and she's still like doing Super Bowl and walking down the Met Gala steps. She's doing a lot, and she still managed to pull out a really perfect on theme look. Might not be the most revolutionary thing in the world, but I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was on theme. I thought it was interesting. And she's still forever in my heart, my Met Gala queen. A few others who I thought also did a great job of hitting the theme, but maybe weren't like revolutionary. Gigi Hadid and Givenchy. This was beautiful. She looked awesome. It was such a nice like subtle homage to Karl Lagerfeld. I really like this. No notes. It wasn't like blow my mind, but it also wasn't horrible. Kim Kardashian and Schiaparelli. I like that she did an homage not only to Lagerfeld, but to herself. A lot of people caught on to the fact that this was an homage to her own Playboy shoot, which I think that's pretty slay. I wish that she had done something different with the middle area. It does genuinely just kind of look like she's wearing Spanx. I don't know if that was intentional. It could have been like an interesting commentary on body standards, and especially because like Kim Kardashian obviously has her own shapewear line, but I don't know if she actually puts that much thought into it. If she did put that much thought into it, great. Cool, I get the commentary pass. If she didn't, I would have loved for this to have been like a white corset or just something that blended a little bit better. I like the homage to the camellia flowers on the jacket, but to be fair, it just kind of looks like something that we've already sort of seen her in. It didn't feel like super over the top glamorous. It was just a good look. I also thought it was interesting that like she spoke so highly of Karl, especially because like she's had a couple of like stories about him. One of the more famous ones being how like Kris Jenner stole a Chanel bag from her. I'll link the story to that below. It's actually really messed up. And the second story is that Karl Lagerfeld actually like sort of semi-blamed her for her being robbed at gunpoint in Paris. He said something along the lines of, you can't flaunt your wealth without expecting some people to want you to share it with them. Essentially saying like she's the one who constantly flaunts how much money she has and what she's traveling with. Like, is she really surprised that somebody came in and mugged her? Which is distasteful to say say the least, to say to someone who thought they were going to die in that moment. But she looked great. Doja Cat and Oscar de la Renta, of course. I think it was so funny that she's like vaping in the back of Emma Chamberlain's interview. Doja Cat really just does have fun on the carpet, and like you can never fault her for that. But even though she has fun with it, I still feel like she does it in a very glamorous and interesting way. It doesn't always feel like kitschy or overdone. I actually really like how she styled this. I thought it was such like a simple homage to Chopette. So if you aren't aware, Chopette is Karl Lagerfeld's cat, who Karl Lagerfeld was obsessed with. He was quoted saying that like he would marry Chopette if he could. And I think this was just like incredibly glamorous, almost like Uncanny Valley style, where it doesn't look so over the top that it's jokey. It almost looks like, wait, this is actually really beautiful. Do I like this? And makes you a little bit uncomfortable, which I love. I think that's so camp. I cannot believe Oscar de la Renta like let her do that. I don't know why, but they're just not a brand that I picture being on board with doing something funky like this. But the dress itself was honestly stunning. Even the cat ears were like really beautiful. The prosthetic was really seamless. I actually really liked this look. Kylie Jenner in Jean Paul Gaultier. A lot of people were like, why did she wear this? It's red. She was actually one of like the only people wearing. They're mowing the lawn next door, so I apologize if you hear some buzzing. She was like one of the only people wearing a really bold color on the carpet. And the Gaultier team did come out later and say that this was an homage not only to Karl Lagerfeld, but to Andre Leon Talley, which I thought was very interesting because the main criticism about this year's event was that it was honoring Karl Lagerfeld, who was kind of a doorknob of a person, as opposed to Andre Leon Talley, who was a very, very loved and cherished person within the fashion community. However, Karl Lagerfeld did design quite a few capes for Andre Leon Talley. I think it's also very interesting that she did that in conjunction with my breakdown of her look from last year, which I actually felt was a commentary on this rift in fashion between high fashion, snooty people who want to keep street fashion out of the conversation, and street style, which is on the rise and has become much more of like a luxury fashion style. I think Kylie Jenner's a little bit more in the know and has her finger on the pulse of fashion a little bit more than she might admit or people might even notice, especially after her like outstanding campaign images that came out where everyone was like, why is Kendall Jenner the model and not Kylie? And in the new trailer of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, there's actually like a voice snippet where Kylie Jenner literally says the words about how the Kardashians need to look more closely about how they're promoting unrealistic beauty standards and how she would never want her children to feel like they had to do what she did, and how she actually wishes she never got any of her work done. I can't say that I don't think that it is also a little bit of a marketing ploy. So I don't know if it's doing it out of like the goodness of her heart and her own like thought process, or if she's genuinely just trying to make sure that she like stays rich. But I think that she's someone we should keep an eye on for like the next couple of years. Bad Bunny and Jacques Mousse was stunning. I loved the giant train, the sleeve trains. I loved the back cutout. It was actually really, really beautiful. I just think in comparison to some of the other men who walked on the carpet this year, it wasn't like as up there for me. I also think some of his past Met Gala looks have been a little bit more interesting in my opinion, but I still think this was so classy, so chic, and I could definitely see like someone wearing this for their wedding day. I also love that him and Jacques Mousse were matching. I just think that's really cute. Lizzo and Chanel was very interesting, especially because like that was designed by Chanel. It was one of the few Chanel pieces that walked down the carpet. Karl Lagerfeld was famously fat phobic, so I think it's very interesting that Lizzo did work with Chanel on this dress. I think it was definitely like a middle finger to the grave and estate of Lagerfeld. I'm not mad about it. I thought she looked stunning. A lot of people were saying that they wished that she had like shown off her figure a little bit more. And to be honest, I don't really like that criticism when it comes to plus size women, just because for whatever reason, people constantly think that in order to be body positive, you have to be like showing your figure and always wearing the most flattering thing, whereas like really tiny women can get away with wearing like empire waists or like shapeless dresses in the name of like high fashion. I think she looked amazing. I loved the pearl details. I loved the shape. I loved the shoes. I loved the hair. I thought this outfit was amazing. I love that she did it with Chanel. Yeah, no notes. I think it was great. It's very unlike what we're used to seeing her in, but I think that's in a good way. Keke Palmer and Sergio Hudson was stunning. I love the pastel colors that Sergio Hudson used. used. I think that they were so pretty and such a like a subtle homage to Chanel. I loved the tweed, I loved the jacket, and Sergio Hudson did say that they were really inspired by Josephine Baker for this look. And I really want her to host the Met Gala again. I think that we haven't had as great of a host as her probably ever. She was meant to be a host. Young Miami and ACF #1 was amazing. Not something I was expecting. P. Diddy and Burberry was also really cool. I thought it was really funny that Lala basically like asked them on the carpet, are you guys dating or not? Lala was trying to get that tea. She did not care about what they were wearing, and honestly can't fault her for it. Sorry, P. Diddy was in Sean John apparently. Vogue has it listed that P. Diddy was in Sean John, so I'm not sure if he was in Sean John for Burberry or Sean John's eponymous label, so we're just gonna say Sean John. I really loved Alton Mason in Karl Lagerfeld Couture. Alton Mason did say that when they think of Chanel, they think of the Chanel bride, which is, yes, oh my gosh, something that is so unique to Lagerfeld is that he could design a bitchin' wedding dress. Like just a really, really amazing wedding dress. And I love that there were a lot of bridal throwbacks in the Met Gala. Alton Mason has been one of my favorites to watch. I loved him in Prada last year. He just always wears something really cool. This isn't like my favorite bridal look ever, but I still love that he did this. And like he looks really stunning. Bella Ramsey, also in Tom Brown, looked really awesome. I think if that was like the only Tom Brown look we saw, I would talk about it more. But Tom Brown just had so many amazing looks this year that Bella Ramsey was just kind of like, yeah, you look good. Okay. Taika Waititi. Ooh. People were correcting my pronunciation on TikTok, so I think it's Taika Waititi.
Like tiger, but with a K instead of the ER.
See, I feel like I did say Taika Waititi. I'm watching a video how to pronounce Taika Waititi, and he says Waititi. Taika Waititi. So I really liked Taika Waititi's look. I thought he looked super cool. I actually liked his look way better than Rita Ora's. I loved the homage to like the oversized Chanel blazer. I thought it was a really cool way to do menswear. I loved Ashley Graham and Harris Reed. I think this was such a cool way to like take the inspiration from Chanel, and honestly not just like Chanel in general, but a very specific piece from Chanel and sort of play off of that. And I think being both a plus size advocate and wearing pink, two things that Karl Lagerfeld was like not a fan of, was such a beautiful way to give homage to like his influence while still giving him the middle finger. So I am an Ashley Graham stan for the night. Jennie Kim from Blackpink in Chanel. I did think that she was gonna go with vintage Chanel. She looked really beautiful, really cute. Again, compared to some other people, it was a little bit underwhelming, but I still really liked it. I thought it was super sweet. Definitely looked like so Jennie. I think Jennie is one of Chanel's best ambassadors that like they've ever had. So I'm glad they did let her pull an archival piece. I loved Brian Tyree Henry and Karl Lagerfeld. This was another man that I thought just like really pulled it off on the carpet. This honestly to me felt like a subtle tribute not only to Karl Lagerfeld's love of 18th and 17th century fashion, but also Andre Leon Talley. Just with like the oversized cape, it just definitely gives me an Andre Leon Talley vibe. The whole look was outstanding. I thought he looked stunning, and I think he's on the top of like a lot of people's best dress looks this year. I loved Ben Platt and Wiederhoft. I think Wiederhoft is going to be one to watch out for. They've just been having such an amazing come up this past year, and I cannot wait to see what more that they do. They're such an outstanding designer, and I'm just like really excited to see the direction that they go. I thought Ben Platt looked outstanding. A lot of people didn't really like the way that he posed. I don't really care about that. I think he always kind of poses like that, so that just sort of seems like that's him. But looking past that, I thought the look was just really cool. I love what he does every year. I really liked his look last year as well. I like that you can see that his style is definitely evolving, and I do hope he gets invited back. And that was like pretty much everyone. Honestly, this year it was just a very underwhelming carpet. And I spoke about a few more people on Instagram as I was live covering the event. But from the people I talked about today, I really tried to focus on the people who I feel like made like a huge splash. And everybody else sort of fell into that area of like, yeah, they looked really great, but like weren't as on theme as some people, or they were on theme, but it just like wasn't as exciting. So let's get into what you all are really waiting for, which is all the people that I was not a fan of from this year's Met Gala. I want to preface this by saying that there was no one who I was like, oh, this looks really bad. Like there have been a few looks in the past where I'm just like, oof, this was not good. But this year I feel like everybody sort of hit the theme. Like I said, it was just like a really easy theme. It would have been really embarrassing to like not go on theme. And I think there was only one person who genuinely I was like, this doesn't work. But let's jump into the people I was meh about. First off, I have a controversial one. I was meh on Lil Nas's Pat McGrath look. Listen, on anybody else, I think it would have been more surprising. But I think the thing about Lil Nas is he does so many outlandish things that sometimes now the outlandish things just feel like, hmm. I actually think he would have been a really interesting one to be dressed by Tom Brown because I think that Lil Nas can pull off so many interesting things that sometimes he goes for shock over substance. But we're getting to the point where now nothing is shocking because everything has been shocking. And I like sort of got the Chopette inspiration. And this is saying it as someone who loves Lil Nas. Like I have so much respect and appreciation for what he does. This is just an explanation of like why I personally was like, oh yeah, cool, Lil Nas is half naked again. See you next year. This other one was also one that I thought was more controversial. I did not like Florence Pugh and Valentino. There was just too much going on. You have the giant train, the fresh buzz cut, the giant feathers, this like crazy neckline, the bow, and there's just so much going on. First of all, this bust area on her did not fit well. It was like really unflattering, sort of looked like it was like not fitting and gonna fall off. I feel like if she was gonna do a neckline that was that daring, Valentino should have thrown a strap on for her so that it would Valentino should have put a strap on. There should have been a strap included in the dress to keep it in place. I actually really love the shaved head look on her. I wish that she had let that sort of have its moment. But I do think that the headpiece with like the amount of hair that she had was wrong. She should have either like buzzed it much closer to her head, or she should have dyed her hair like a much darker color. Actually, I think her hair is dyed pretty dark. I don't know. There's something about it that I did not like the headpiece with her shaved head. I wish she would have done like one or the other. Actually, I wish she would have not done that headpiece. I was not a fan of the headpiece. I feel like I would have liked the headpiece more if it was with a different outfit. I don't know. There's a lot going on here. I'm not a fan. Also, I think the bow was just like really teeny tiny. Like I feel like it should have been like a huge bow. I don't know. I didn't like it. This was one of the only ones of the night where I genuinely was like, oh, this does not look good. Like it's not flattering. There's too much going on and it just like doesn't suit her, which I think is more frustrating because she's been working with Valentino for such a long time now. You would think Valentino at this point would know how to dress her in a way that was really flattering or to do experimental things with her that wouldn't make her look like a mess. I think this was just a miss on everyone's part. Another one that I wasn't like a huge fan of was actually Billie Eilish, which I was shocked by because I love Simone Rocha. I actually love Billie Eilish's style. I just didn't like this look. Hold up. I shouldn't say I didn't like it because actually she looks really beautiful, and if she had worn this to the Oscars, she probably would have ended up on like my best dress look of the night. But it just sort of felt like not really as on theme as it could have been. And I feel like she's been really good at hitting the themes the past couple of years, so I just don't really know what happened here. I think she actually looks really cool. This is a really flattering look on her. I just didn't really get it. I also think Billie Eilish, one thing I really liked about her was she was so like, I wear clothes based on what makes me feel good, not necessarily what makes me look good to other people. And I do feel like she's lost that a little bit. I do think that a few of the pieces that she's worn down carpets in recent years have been very much to like show off her figure. And before you all come at me and say, she looked so beautiful, she looked so pretty. I know she did. She looks stunning. But that's not the point of the Met Gala. Looking pretty is only one part of like a bigger picture. So if you just look pretty, that's not Met Gala worthy, hun. Another one, and this one I actually like, I genuinely think I just didn't like this because I don't really particularly like him, but Jared Leto's weird like mascot cat costume, not my favorite, especially because like he walked down like literally right after Doja Cat did, and I was like, oh, Doja, so interesting, like I actually really like the way that you interpreted Chopette. And then he walks down in a literal just like Chopette costume, and I was just like, yeah, I guess. And then he took it off and he was wearing Lagerfeld Couture, and even that was like a little bit boring. It just very much felt like he was trying so hard to be funny, and like he thought that he was so funny. And it's like that Steve Buscemi meme of like, hey kids. I don't know. It just felt like he was trying really hard to be Gen Z. Like this man is 51 years old. I just thought it was like very juvenile, and I didn't think it was very funny. I do think it's interesting how many Gen Z kids on TikTok are like, this was iconic. And it makes me believe that the only reason why you would like what Jared Leto did is either because you don't really know anything about fashion or you're 13 years old. And there was nothing witty about that. It was just like very like, you're just making fun of Chopat. Chopat didn't do anything to you. If you were making fun of Lagerfeld, like if he had come in like a Lagerfeld style mascot costume, that would have been funny. That would have been actually really funny. I would have laughed really hard. But it's like, Chopat, really? Now it just makes me think you're a furry. Ooh, one I'm gonna get a lot of flack for, Pedro Pascal. He was fine. Like wasn't off theme or anything, but the fact that some of you all are going so feral over a man's knee, I personally am not randy enough to see what y'all see in this man. Like a knee has you all in a tizzy like this. Babies, y'all are better than this, please. Lily Collins looked so beautiful. I think she drew the short end of the stick working with Vera Wang. I have not liked Vera Wang's Met Gala looks the past couple of years. I also just thought it was a little bit like uninspired to do like the Carl on the train. Dua Lipa in vintage Chanel. Everyone and their mother wanted this Chanel look to walk down the Met Gala carpet, and Dua Lipa is such an interesting person. She has such a strong sense of style. She can pull off so many interesting looks, and she just took the most boring, underwhelming route that you could. I don't really know why. I don't know why she decided to really not do anything stylistically, especially considering like this was probably the most anticipated and the most requested dress out of any of the Chanel archival pieces that were going to be a part of the Met Gala this year. And I think it's like honestly a really great honor that she was chosen to wear this dress, because it is something that is like so on the forefront of everyone's mind when they think of Chanel bridal, and it's so relevant right now. Like I feel like a lot of people are taking inspiration from this specific bridal piece. Honestly, for me, she let me down. She was one of my most anticipated people. I was genuinely so excited to see her, especially compared to what she has worn before in the past. This was so like such a letdown. And I know a lot of people were like, well, she looks beautiful, she wanted the dress to speak for itself. The dress spoke for itself on the runway. The dress has spoken for itself for many years. We did not need the dress to speak for itself. We needed a really interesting Chanel bridal look. Even if she had just thrown her hair up the same way that she did for the 2019 Met Gala, the same way that Blake Lively had done for Met Galas in the past, the same way that Anne Hathaway did for her Versace look. If she had just done a little bit more, I would not be saying anything about it, but it just felt so lackluster, and this was genuinely like my most disappointing look of the entire night. She looks stunning. If she had done this for the Oscars, if she had done this for the Grammys, I would not be saying a word. If she had done this for her own wedding one day, stunning. But for the Met Gala, that was in honor of Karl Lagerfeld, the designer of this piece, and it's arguably like one of his most famous pieces of all time. And you debuted the new Tiffany necklace. Like, come on, Dua. Eileen Gu was the only one who I genuinely thought was like off theme. Eileen Gu wore Robert Won, one of the wedding dresses from his debut Haute Couture collection. I am such a fan of Robert Won. I think he is an outstanding designer. I think that he is going to be at the forefront of a lot of minds going into the next couple of years. I think he's a really huge up and comer. I'm so excited to see what he does in the future. And I'm really disappointed that they just sort of like threw a dress on her and like sent her off. Especially because this was not his only Met Gala look. He also dressed Thames, who I thought looked outstanding on theme. She wasn't my favorite of the night, which is the only reason why I didn't include her earlier. But like she was on theme and I thought looked really great for her debut Met Gala. Eileen Gu just like looked like, oh, she just pulled from Robert Woon because like it was available. And I don't really love that like in her Instagram post she also like didn't tag him. It was like a sponsored post with a watch company, so she tagged the watch company but like didn't tag him anywhere. And I actually really love this dress. This is one of my favorite bridal pieces that he sent on the runway. I just don't really see what it has to do with Lagerfeld besides like being loosely related to the fact that Lagerfeld was like kind of known for bridal. I don't know, I feel like it was just a PR grab from Robert Woon, like definitely just like trying to get some attention and just trying to get something sent down the Met Gala carpet. I wish there had been a little bit more thought put into it from like Eileen's stylist. It was not the strongest Met Gala debut, and I'm really glad that he also dressed Thames because I think that's getting a lot more positive attention. Eileen Gu was like one of the first people out and nobody's really talking about it. Like it wasn't bad enough that people were like, oh my god, did you see that horrible thing? But it wasn't impactful enough to get Robert Woon, I think, the praise that he deserves. I also didn't really love Ice Spice in Balmain. I think a lot of people regard Ice Spice as like this larger than life person and like a huge extrovert and like really fun and almost like a Doja Cat kind of character, but she always kind of underwhelms me in the fashion department. And considering this was her debut Met Gala, I was expecting for her to come out the gates like really swinging. I think that's the biggest thing with the Met Gala is a lot of people think, oh, for the first Met Gala, we should give them a pass. And I personally think for the first Met Gala, like you should be trying harder than every other year, because at this point, it's so easy to just like not get invited back, especially if you are a smaller name. Not that Ice Spice is like a small name, but she's definitely like not as well known as like a Kardashian or a Rihanna. And the Met Gala is somewhere where you have the opportunity to really get your name circulating in like every circle that you want it to circulate in. I think Zendaya really took advantage of this. In the very first Met Gala that she attended, she cemented herself as like a Met Gala attendee. Like if Zendaya ever didn't get invited to the Met Gala for whatever reason, I genuinely think people would riot. People are thirsting for her to come back to the carpet. And all of that is because the first few years that she attended the Met Gala, she really went all in. I actually think Kim Kardashian is another person who did this with her first Met Gala look. Was it like the best look of all time? No, but it was extremely memorable. And she went from being a +1 to now being on the guest list every single year. So I was just really disappointed that both Eileen Gu and Ice Spice did not take more advantage of being invited to the Met Gala. I just thought they should have done more. And finally, like, this is not a person, but a designer. Michael Kors is usually like my least favorite person to watch for the Met Gala. I just think he consistently either misses entirely or just like underwhelms. And this year his looks were fine. Again, like not anything to write home about, not horrendous, but just like not the best looks that came down the carpet. And there we have it. The 2023 Met Gala has officially come to a close. Thank you so much for sticking through and listening to all of my thoughts on the 2023 Met Gala. If I missed any of your favorites or least favorites, leave them in a comment below. I would love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, as well as following along on Instagram and TikTok. I do really try to create different pieces of content and introduce different thoughts and discussions on each platform. So to get the most out of Gown and Girl, just be sure to follow me on all of my platforms. But thank you so much for watching. I cannot wait until our next video, and I will see you next time.